We get these kind of false ideas in our heads, and we accept them because we think that this is the way forward, so that we can be those really good progressive Muslims of the past. But the reality is, the Muslims of the past, they wasn't abandoning their hijabs in order to seek knowledge. That's not how it was. And it was
one time when I was taking a customer their tray of oysters, he told me in front of his wife, "Must be hot under there, huh?" And I was like, there's a lot of Muslim women in Africa. I think they do just fine. And I put it down. I can get in trouble for that. I can get in trouble for responding to a bigot.
You don't know how many disputes I get into who really do not like the concept of polygyny. And it's like, right, okay, well, no woman likes the thought of polygyny if it comes to their own marriage. This is common sense. However, there is something bigger than that, though, that we need to keep in mind. For you to be involved in a polygynous situation, even if you don't think like that initially, imagine if you get yourself to a place where you're thinking of your co-wife's rights, you're thinking of your co-wife's times, you're sort of holding your husband accountable. Is that not the level of iman that we're all trying to reach? Like that sort of selflessness? Is that not the goal? So it's like, if you focus on the negative in life, that's all you'll see. But if you see the potential, if you see the opportunity that you can gain within that, you should go for it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. So this episode of Muslim Mum Academy is just going to be a little bit different. We had some technical issues, and because we all live in different continents, sometimes it's really hard to get the 3 years together. So the approach is going to be a little bit different, but I can assure you the conversation is not affected. Originally, this was only going to be one episode, but we realised that actually this one needs a part 2. So Inshā'Allāh, keep watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and may Allah make it beneficial. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope we're all doing well, Inshā'Allāh.
Walaikum assalam.
Allah says in the Quran, the only saying of the faithful believers when they are called to Allah, His words, the Quran, and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to judge between them, is that they say, we hear and we obey. And such are the successful. And whosoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, fears Allah, and keeps his duty to Him, such are the successful. May Allah make us amongst them.
Ameen.
So as sisters, we get a lot of requests to do hijab tutorials. I don't know if you ever had that request to do a hijab tutorial.
A while ago, yeah. And I think to myself, like, I'm not that kind of content creator.
This is the closest to a hijab tutorial you're ever going to get from us. So today's conversation is just a conversation between Muslim women. It's unfortunate that I need to put out a disclaimer, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. So this video is not here to judge anyone who is still working on this aspect of themselves, right? We all have our personal struggles. While some of us have struggles in one area, others struggle in other areas, like we're all imperfect. We're all trying to strive and be better, inshallah. This is just sisters advising sisters and encouraging sisters. It really is that simple. We want good for each other, take what is helpful. And if there's any advice that you can give us, then please feel free to leave it in the comments section. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Troublemaker. You're a troublemaker. This is why we're here today.
I don't look for trouble, it's trouble that looks for me.
Of course. You are the innocent party. So we had some technical issues the last time, and Millihan says a whole other time zone, so there's only really reserved and limited time that we can all get together at one time. So because of the technical issues, we've decided to mix things up a wee bit. We're going to be speaking about a topic that me and you have touched on many a time. The hijab topic is a big one, a common one, and a very sensitive one. Some people know the hijab as a headscarf, but the hijab is actually a concept. It's something that we do, and we do it for Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala first and foremost. But as a result, it's something that we do for ourselves. We're not really getting into the thick of hijab, although we might touch in some areas. But it's really important that the sisters know that the hijab topic, it deserves the respect of us studying it fully, because it affects our everyday. It's really, really important. We shouldn't be scared to look into the topics that intimidate us. If the hijab topic does intimidate you, it's even more reason that you should look into it. because the religion is going to give you what you need to be able to understand it. Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says in the Quran, "Read, and your Lord is most generous, who taught by the pen, taught humanity what they know not." It's going to give you the hack of hijab. Why do you think it's important for the Muslim Mum Academy series to cover this topic?
Because it's always going to be a topic. I mean, there's going to be somebody who wants to wear it. There's always going to be the people or the sisters who don't want to wear it for whatever reason. Maybe they was not raised to wear the hijab. Maybe they could be from a Muslim background, or maybe they're new Muslims.
Yeah.
There's going to be sisters who, for example, maybe they wear a scarf. They think that's hijab, like complete hijab, but because they haven't been educated to know what the hijab really is, they just kind of stay like that. And this is not to criticize people, obviously, it's just to make a point. As Islam is a thinking religion, and we have to think and use our brains. That's what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala encourages us to do. We don't just listen to what people say and just nod our heads. We learn about our religion should be backed with evidence from the religion, you know, because otherwise we have cases where people think there's certain things that come from Islam which isn't to do with Islam at all. It just happens to be part of their culture. Usually the hijab is what the West sees as a means of oppressing Muslim women, and as well even some Muslim girls or some Muslim women have bought into that. The issue of the niqab as well, you know, some people think that the niqab has nothing to do with Islam, and I always talk about the niqab because for this very reason. Muslims are so confused about what the hijab is, which they shouldn't be, but unfortunately we are. So if we see a sister, for example, wearing, you know, she's got her skin tight clothes on and she's got a headscarf on, we'll say, okay, well, she's got hijab on. But if you see a sister that's head to foot in black and, you know, she's got her jilbab and wearing a niqab, you'll say, oh, she's doing too much, she's extreme, when actually one is hijab and one just isn't. So for these reasons, it's important that we talk about the hijab, basically.
Why do you think it's important that the Muslim Mum Academy series covered the topic of hijab?
I think it's important to cover the topic of hijab because modesty is becoming more and more threatened and seen as a threat, and is being more slandered. In order to combat this, it's highly important that Muslim women speak out for themselves and not only allow the men to do it, even though that's great that they do it. But if you are to convince a liberal radical feminist that you're not oppressed, sometimes you have to have the woman say it herself rather than a male intercessor.
And sisters ask me, Muslims ask me, why do you do it? My first answer, and I want everyone listening to me, learn this. And may Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala put it in your heart as He put it in mine.
Ameen.
And you say, why you're wearing your head cover, or why you're wearing your Islamic attire? I say, because Allah asked me to do it, period. And then they say, is it a choice? This is the second question you always get. And I said, it's your choice and mine to obey Allah or not to obey Him. And I need to be ready at the day of judgment when I'm standing in front of Him. And I better prepare a very good answer why I chose not to obey Him.
And so it's important that women communicate why they do it, and that we totally dismantle the propaganda of modesty as a form of slavery, as a form of mind control and things and that along that nature. And as the world grows more and more lewd, there's more and more temptations for sisters to abandon the hijab and to become liberated. I'm using that in sarcastic quotation marks. And this will lead to a lot of internal conflicts, because the hijab is a beautiful gift and mercy that rids us of the male gaze. And the male gaze is a commodifying gaze in many aspects of our lives. And so when we rid ourselves of that, we become closer to Allah, because all acts of obedience that Allah approves of, right, lead us to be nearer to Him. And the hijab is something that can lead us to have stronger faith and have stronger fear of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. And we become more reserved and conscious when we wear the hijab, the niqab, the jilbab, you name it. And this is very important, especially for today's youth who maybe, like, for example, my daughter is the only Muslim at her school who wears the hijab. And so, you know, she's a brave little kid doing that. And I'm sure there's other mamas out there in the world whose daughter is the only one who does. So if they see us being strong, we are pillars for them as well. And the hijab is also a walking form of dawah. A lot of people have, like, for example, I went into Barnes & Noble about maybe 3 months ago. And there on the bookshelf There was no really any Muslim books there, but there was one on something that said jihad something something, and it had women in black niqabs, looking like oppressed women.
Of course.
And there was nothing positive there about the hijab, right? A nun is portrayed really positively. Eastern Orthodox portrayed, monks and their shaved heads and their outfits, they're portrayed. But the way the Muslim woman was depicted, it's a specific, military industrial complex angle that is almost so hard to break out of the American mind that I like to have these kinds of conversations so that we can stop the war on the hijab. So conversations like this help that.
Yeah, it's also something in the UK, like me and Summer have had many conversations about it. I can see the difference in people's reaction when I wear a colour in comparison to wearing black. In Scotland, the niqab in itself, abaya even, is not common. Even though we have a Muslim community in Glasgow, we are the biggest city in Scotland, a lot of people don't, a lot of the Muslims don't wear abaya. Just abaya, never mind niqab, there's a few within the community, but not many. And it really is a stigma, extreme sort of jihadi loving or as apologists, ridiculousness, which is a real some of the best people I know will dress like this, that I have ever met in my life, actually.
You wearing black, and then that's similar to the way I see as just wearing the Islamic clothing in general.
Yeah.
Because now sometimes I do choose to wear different shades just for my own safety, because I have to walk alone sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's the good thing is that I've seen the priests, sometimes they walk around. There's like some Catholics around here, and the priests, they wear their black. So sometimes I think people think I'm part of Eastern Orthodox or something. so I'm like, okay, at least there's some religious other groups, people walking around. And I've seen Mormon missionary ladies, so maybe people will think they don't know much about Islam. They may think I'm like a missionary or something. But sometimes I will wear different shades just for my own safety. And sometimes I get a lot of compliments from old grandmas when I wear different colors. They'll be like, oh, I love this. Like, it seems to be a less intimidating and frightening thing for them.
Yeah. When I was studying hijab, obviously, the more I learned, the more I adapted it to what I learned, So initially, how I understood it is that, there's no really any restriction on colour, right? That was the sort of first thing I understood. And whilst that is in a sense true, it shouldn't be anything that sort of becomes an attraction in and of itself. So, that won't apply to all colour palettes, but it will sort of cover some maybe materials or some styles that you wear it in and stuff like that. So before I sort of learned more about that, I was wearing every colour all the time. As I've got older as well, I've realised that that's not, that I've sort of changed in that sense. The colours that maybe I would wear 5 years ago aren't really colours that I desire to wear anyway, not just that what I've learned now. Hopefully the more you learn and the more you adopt, the closer you get to, how it should be.
It's one that is Muslims that, helped technology advance so far, especially in the Middle Ages, or what they call the Dark Ages, which was actually the golden age for us. See, because we live under a Western narrative, a lot of us don't even know contributions that Muslims or Islam has made because of our religion. We don't know. And that's unfortunate. Because a lot of us live like that. We have the inferiority complex and identity crisis issues as a result, because we want to be forward thinking, and we'll see in our religion, the first line to the Prophet ﷺ was, read, Iqra, we're supposed to read. That means we're supposed to be educated. So in order for one to pursue education, the sister will believe that it's okay, or her parents will convince her even that it's fine to not wear your hijab, or it's fine to, not wear hijab properly, for example, or you don't wear too much, don't cover up too much, you don't want to look like an extremist. So we get these kind of false ideas in our heads, and we accept them because we think that this is the way forward, so that we can be those really good progressive Muslims of the past. But the reality is, the Muslims of the past, they wasn't abandoning their hijabs in order to seek knowledge. That's not how it was, and it was better than us. They had to work harder than us as well in order to seek the knowledge too. That's another thing. Whereas we've got knowledge literally is on a plate available anywhere you go, even if you don't go to university. People that are in prisons, that they study degrees, so education is literally available to everybody now. It's on a plate. But the people of the past, they had to work a lot harder for it, and they didn't abandon their hijabs in the process. They really didn't.
The thing is, right, it's no to say that how dare you find this difficult? I think what the problem is that it's become such a widespread pressure that a lot of people, in order to handle it and deal with it, they've created a narrative that, you know, hijab is no that big a deal. And I think if we look at the sources, we'll notice very quickly that it is an important
Not
topic.
wearing the Islamic hijab, a major sin? What is the punishment for women who display their makeup and clothes in public? There is an Arabic word for this, which is tabarruj. And this word was mentioned in chapter 33, where Allah Azza wa Jal prohibited exposing your awrah as a woman like they used to do in pre-Islamic era. وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَا تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. And this by itself is sinful. Whether it is a major sin or a minor sin is not of great importance to us, because when a Muslim looks at the size of the sin, he neglects whom he is sinning against. But if you look at Allah the Almighty, His greatness, His excellence, and that you are sinning against Him, who's all watching, all hearing, who provides for you, who controls every breath you take. You cannot inhale without His permission, and you cannot exhale without His permission. Yet you insist on sinning, then you are in great trouble. A major sin, as defined by scholars, is every sin that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed a prescribed punishment in this dunya, or Allah Azza wa Jal has placed a curse on those who do such things, or any sin that Allah Azza wa Jal told us that whoever does this will be admitted to hellfire. Therefore, if you look at not abiding by the hijab, a woman who shows her hair, or wears revealing clothes, or wear makeup, and does not care whether non-mahram men look at her or not, is this a major sin or not? The Prophet told us, alayhi salatu wasalam, and the hadith is in the Sahih, that there are two types of people he did not see, yet they are among the people of hell. He mentioned one of them to be women who are dressed yet nude, meaning that either they're wearing transparent clothes, you can see through it, so that she's actually nude, or she's wearing tight clothes that reveals her awrah. In another hadith, he said, curse them because they are cursed by Allah Azza wa Jal, which is an indication that this is indeed a major sin. Therefore, whoever does such an act of exposing her awrah, her beauty, in a fashion that would turn heads towards her, she's either committing a kabira, a major sin, or a minor sin. And this depends on the level of her tabarruj.
For the sake of our akhirah, for the best shot in the next life, that it is something that we concentrate on, and it is something we strive towards, and it is something that we get to know, and we slowly, if we're not able to do it quickly, we implement it, you know. There's one thing saying, you know, I really struggle in this area, but to spread those false narratives. That's where the problem comes in, because, you know, that might be an area for a person that they were still getting to know. They think maybe because you're raised Muslim that you will understand the concept of hijab, and they might take your narrative off as truth. It's a part of the problem, right? Speaking without knowledge is definitely an issue. And Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, do not follow what you have no sure knowledge of. Indeed, all will be called to account for their hearing, sight and intellect. And if you look into the tafsir of this ayah, it puts an emphasis on speaking without knowledge. So please be careful of who you take your knowledge from. Allah has given me that privilege to not seek validation from anyone else but Him. And like I was saying to Marahan the other day, like that in itself is the freedom that money truly cannot buy. The day that you are able to not worry about the thoughts and the judgments of people, but just the pleasing of your Creator.
Exactly, subhanAllah. And we know that actions by intentions. Okay, so just coming back to what you were saying about, obviously we're not here to judge people or say that they shouldn't be having this struggle, but actions are by intention. So if we take that principle and try to apply it to even your struggle with the hijab, surely that should mean that if you look into what the hijab is and you try to wear hijab to the best of your ability, whatever that is at the time that you're in, because sometimes people don't have, for example, even money to buy like proper hijab. Some, especially new Muslims, it could be that you can't afford to buy an abaya or jilbab or more clothes to actually cover your body, like to fit the criteria of what the hijab is. It could be you're in that situation. But you should have the intention. That's why it's important to have the knowledge in the first place, understand what the hijab is, what it isn't, and accept that, because that's part of your Islam, to accept what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala has commanded you. And that's everything, not just the hijab. So we have to have the acceptance, like you mentioned. We can't just make excuses and pretend that, oh, that's not really hijab, or I'm okay as I am, not doing my obligations. It's nothing to do with men. It's a command from Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. So wherever you are at the moment, have the intention that as soon as you can do better, that you will.
We take the concept to the filter, for example. When a sister gets used to seeing her face in a filter and then tries to look in the mirror without the filter.
Oh no, she doesn't have cat ears?
Shock. Sorry?
She doesn't have cat ears?
Yeah, exactly. That and a perfect symmetric, like all of it. It throws a person off, I really cannot stand it, to be honest with you. Like, I really speak about it to my daughter and anybody who will listen all the time, because I think it's so damaging to the psyche. So I do think it's like that though, when a people are used to seeing women present themselves in certain ways, in certain styles, etc., anything that sort of goes against the status quo is sort of feared, is sort of looked at as weird. And then when you add all the media sort of coverage of Muslims over the generations on top of that, it's expected that people are not going to understand. And I do definitely have mercy, like you were talking about the older generation, that they give you compliments. So I try to make sure that when I come across the older generation, when I get in their way, I do try to say, oh, sorry, or hi, or, I do try to make sure that they maybe hear the accent. And the same with little kids as well. I think little kids get really scared. So I always try to wave to them or cross my eyes, just so that I can slowly build that rapport, really. I know that might seem silly when it's with strangers, but again, I think we don't realise the lasting memories that people can have when they have these little interactions, like what it can do for their full bias when they see a niqabi sort of say, oh, excuse me, oh, I'm sorry, or on you go first, or something like this, These interactions are, like you said, dawah in and of itself.
But some people, they are blessed by Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala to live in a community where maybe their style is more normalized and not a big deal. I remember I was before I had said my shahada, I had gone to work. I was hired, and I wasn't wearing a hijab at the time, right? So the manager, he's a male manager, saw me. I go in my fancy woman suit kind of outfit you go when you go to apply. But then later, I say my shahada. I don't have mascara and I have a hijab on. The way he looked at me was with pure disgust, and I'm never going to forget that unless I get dementia.
Wow.
But the way he flipped was like, it was like you could tell something was just no more. And then also some of the female managers changed. One lady in particular, like it was cold in the morning. We had to set up the tables and whatnot. It was this very elegant seafood place. We were waiting for the delivery of the oysters. And she was like, oh, you're all bundled up like a little ninja. But she said it in a sarcastic, mean way. She just didn't like to see it. And even one time when I was taking a customer their tray of oysters, he told me in front of his wife, must be hot under there, huh? And I was like, there's a lot of Muslim women in Africa. I think they do just fine. And I put it down. I can get in trouble for that. I can get in trouble for responding to a bigot, because to the bosses, it's money first. You don't matter. But I started to get a lot of opposition. So some women, they can really fear like financial repercussions for wearing the hijab because it identifies us. But I'm here to tell you that I'm glad I didn't have that job. I'm a stay-at-home mom now. My life is much better. I'm very glad that, I walked away and didn't go back, and I got pregnant and had another child,
So worked out for the best. We'd be kidding ourselves on if we said that bad experiences don't happen, because they do. right? And that's why there is a range of ways we protect ourselves, you know. That's why we live the lifestyles that we do. That's why we get told not to travel with a mahram. Like, all these things are important. They're all there for a reason. So it is really important that we understand how we go about the everyday, right? Like, that's what we are trying to do here, is promote that, because we don't really feel like there's enough talk about it. So yeah, so definitely bad experiences happen, but it's important to understand that even though they happen, they probably never happen as much as you anticipate they're going to, you know. And I think for me, the concept of hijab in and of itself, like me covering, wasn't really something that made me feel a certain way. It wasn't something that made me feel bad. It was something that I wanted to adopt as soon as I sort of looked into it and started to understand it. But I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous, and me and a friend converted together. We said our shahada on the same day. But before we had actually got to that stage, we tried to wear hijab outside. So we decided that we would go out one day wearing it, and we were going to walk to a garage, and then we were going to walk back, and we were going to do it together. And I think we expected every person to walk past us and to have a reaction. But when we did it, when we went outside and we walked, no one looked at us. No one. Absolutely no one. There was just something about that experience that set me up for everything else. You know, it was in the winter, so I don't know if I was expecting people to start hitting me with snowballs or something. It did teach me that it wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. So once I had that experience, that was it.
No, so I know some sisters have businesses, for example, where they sell hijab, and they're selling, correct hijab. So they're showing their clothes, what they've got, because that's how they're making money. As I said, actions by intention. I really, truly believe social media is literally a curse to Muslim women. See, and even for sisters who wear the niqab, I'm just going to put it out there, because I'm not saying that because we wear the niqab that you should be flaunting yourself all over the place and stuff like that. People are taking things to an extreme level. They're going to say they're trying to encourage sisters to be confident in their hijab, but how do we be confident now in our hijab if we're going against the commands of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala at the same time? That's not real confidence. There's just so many things, you just think is that what our religion has been reduced to?
You go outside to do whatever it is you need to do, and then you go back in the house. No one sees you after you're back in the house, but online, when you're online, you stay online. You're always going to be there. We've sort of touched on this before, that as reverts, our sort of implementation of hijab developed over time, but the sort of online sphere and the social media sphere, it wasn't how it is now. It wasn't like that back then. So alhamdulillah, no one ever got to witness that, but a lot of people are sort of putting that journey out online, and it can come with a lot of regret, because once you start to understand hijab and what that means, and you start to develop and you start to practice it properly, and you get better and better, when you realise that there's nothing you can do about the content you put out online, it can come with serious regret. You really need to take that serious. You are worth double, triple checking. The advice is there for a reason.
The fitna of social media is so big that it's funny that you'll see sisters posting online, and then when people are maybe expressing what they would deem to be negative comments, they get offended. Oh, you're judging me. But you put yourself out to be judged, because social media is a platform. All of them are platforms. They're judgment platforms. Everybody, you let anybody and everybody see you. So that means that anybody and everybody who has an opinion has then the right to make whatever comments they feel like making. You can't control what people think and what they feel, and stop them from saying what they want to say till they said it and you don't like it, and then you decide you're going to block them, obviously. Okay, that's what you can do. But if you want to spend all day not blocking people, you've still read the comment to block them in the first place, and that has another knock-on effect, because it's going to also affect your confidence and maybe and hurt your feelings, basically, because that's what happens. People get offended, and if it's a case, sometimes subhanAllah, you might even be trying to advise a sister in the nicest, most sincerest way possible, using the sweetest words that you can even think to put together, and she's offended. Why? But just because you've told her that what she's doing isn't the right way, or is not 100% correct, or she can do better, that says a lot. Get the attention, and they want the pats on the back, they want people to champion them for whatever they're doing, however they look, all this kind of stuff. What about seeking Allah's approval and getting Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala talk about you in the heavens and tell the angels that you're his faithful servant? It's dear to him that the angels, they send salam on you all the time, and they praise the goodness that you're doing, and then because of that, then people on the earth also are going to respect you because you're a person of principle, not just somebody who, you know, is like this person that's just looking for attention and trying to do the next thing that's going to please the algorithm and get as much likes and views as possible. I can't remember what I was listening to recently, but somebody was saying that every like that you get for something you put online, which is haram, that's literally you're totaling up like sins.
Yeah,
Literally, you're wearing your scarf or your hijab, and you come in and putting your face in the camera and showing people how to put makeup on, or showing people how to put on hijab, all this, or doing these poses.
Some of the stuff online is crazy, and I do definitely agree that there's some people out there who have questionable agendas, right? But there is also some people, I think that they're nice people who are learning and progressing and wanting to share that journey online, which is admirable. Who wouldn't want to share the amazing journey of learning and developing in Islam? So I understand that urge to want to share that. But I think some people miss the potential negative sharing that they can do with that. When you spoke about the advice, people getting defensive when it comes to other Muslims advising them. So obviously we know that some people can be really rude and really harsh and cruel sometimes. So we know that that exists. So we're not talking about that sort of behaviour, because obviously there's an etiquette, especially if they're reverts and they're new. And I do see that there's a lot of new reverts who don't wear hijab yet, who have quite big channels. They seem like really lovely sisters, right? But I do notice that sometimes, quite often actually, they put out videos of them being super hyper offended when some people advise them to wear hijab. And I think the advice that I would love to give the sister in that situation is, we understand firsthand, because we're reverts as well, we understand that that's a journey. And the advice is to keep learning about Allah and to keep learning about what pleases Allah, and to keep learning about the topic of hijab. That will build your iman and hopefully, inshallah, build a connection to this aspect of submission, which is really, really important. Another thing I would say is, especially online, like I remember some people were saying in the comment section, you know, she doesn't wear hijab because one time she did and she got assaulted outside, which obviously we can totally understand why that would traumatise a sister. But at the same time, you know, you putting hijab online or covering yourself online, it's the minimum you should do for yourself. You know, no one is going to assault you through a camera. You're never going to please the people online, like you said. You're always going to get some negative comment in some sort of way. They might say, I value hijab, I understand that, I want to wear it, but, you know, I'm going to get assaulted outside if I wear it. But that's not the same situation online, sister, especially the ones that have a large following. There's a lot of people who are following you. And even though it might not be intentional, you should worry about just normalising not wearing hijab. Look into it, at least do something where you're walking towards fixing that potential sort of ripple effect that you could be creating. You don't always need to put your face on camera. You know, I'm not advising any sisters to go online because, again, the general advice is that we are not online. So I really want to make sure that that's clear. But there's other things that you can do where you still protect yourself and protect those who really look up to you and see you as an influence. Maybe you didn't ask to be an influence for the Muslim community or the revert community, but you are, though, if you have a large platform. So you should tread with caution
as you present yourself online. If you insist on presenting yourself online, because you're not forced to present yourself online, that's your own choice to do that. That's one thing. If you say that it's a valid reason you're not wearing hijab where you live because, you know, you feel that you're going to face abuse and all these other kind of things, it doesn't give you a ticket to then do all sorts of other haram things as well, because sometimes we see sisters doing that. So it's just like, okay, if you're not wearing a hijab, and when I say hijab in this sense, I mean covering your hair and your head, because obviously that's what people mostly see it as. You could still wear loose clothes. You could still wear like a loose dress, a jilbab, for example, or a baya, but people don't do that. You see that when they stop wearing the scarf, they just take off everything. So they'll show their arms, they'll show part of their legs, they'll wear tight clothes. You know, they'll just look like, you know, like they're wearing non-Muslim's dress, like a non-Muslim woman would wear when she walks outside, you know, with no differentiation. But, you know, but you said it was the hijab that was the problem. So if it's the hijab that, you know, you had the issue with, or, you know, you suffered some abuse or whatever because of it, because of covering your hair, because that's what really makes you stand out from, you know, non-Muslim women when it comes to like looking different. You could be wearing loose clothes. You make the not wearing the scarf itself an excuse to then do all these other things. As I said, it comes back to your intentions. Okay, if you really want to wear the hijab and you find that where you live you're not able to wear it because of abuse and kind of discrimination in public and these kind of things, what you need to be trying to do as much as possible is to move from where you live. Don't live in that area anymore. Move to where there's more Muslims. Move to another country if it's possible and if you can. That's what you should be doing. You should have that whole intention that that's what you want to do. And Allah knows if you're making the effort or not. It's not for us to sit down and judge you if you're making the effort, if you can and if you can't. That's between you and Allah.
Yeah, definitely. And we're not, like, this is the thing, like, even what we said just a couple of seconds ago might be seen as a bit harsh, but you have to understand that any parents out there, any older siblings or anything like that, when you see your younger sibling or when you see your child doing something that's dangerous, that's not good for them, you're going to advise them. And if they constantly don't listen, then sometimes your tone will change a little bit, but behind it is always love. It's always care for their well-being. It's care for where constant mistake making can lead you to, because we know that your iman increases with good actions, but it also decreases with bad actions, and sometimes that can take you to really dark and toxic places that are really hard to pull yourself out of. We don't want that for you. We don't want you to lead other people in that direction either. This is the beauty of an ummah. We all care and love for one another. What's the hadith that mentions it? The parable of the believers and their affection, mercy and compassion for each other is that of a body. When any limb aches, the whole body reacts with sleeplessness and fever. Therefore, it's important to keep in mind that when the Ummah advises each other, that we give nasiha with humility and we take nasiha with humility. We all want good for each other. It is a part of our characteristics to want the best for each other. So a part of that is keep check on each other in an honourable way and according to the boundaries set by the Sharia, Inshā'Allāh.
I'm a Muslim woman and it's part of my responsibility to order the good and forbid the evil. And I do genuinely love and care for my sisters in Islam. And if I didn't, I wouldn't say anything ever. Do you know what I mean? This is what people don't seem to understand. I've been a single woman for a very long time. And if I wanted to dress how you're dressing, or even worse, then I could do that, subhanAllah. So it's nothing to do with that. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's pressured me to dress how I dress. It's jealousy in the reverse, because I would like my sisters to be able to be better than I am. I would like you to see that you could be even better than me.
You studying it doesn't mean that you're going to get it right tomorrow. Yeah. But at least you have a clear goal to strive for. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, and with the knowledge is power, it also, when we wear it, it's such a protest against the modern society. And it's fascinating because the more modest you become, the more angry and vitriolic these degenerates become. And I have noticed this. I'm talking about women who their entire identity is built upon their allure. And when they see you, there's something inside that they find just offensive. Like the audacity they feel of us. Like, you're free. Like, I don't know. There's just, they see us as oppressed. I see them as enchained. We're on opposite sides. It's quite fascinating. And someone like me who grew up with all kinds of things in America, when I let that go, and then people come to me like online or say something horrible about me changing the way in which I dress and everything, they don't pause and ask themselves, what led this American woman here to leave that Western immodesty and to convert to Islam, and then not only convert, but break entirely free of the fashion industry, of the adult entertainment industry, and the male gaze. Yeah. They always find a way to say, like, oh, well, you must not love yourself, or you're a slave to your man. Yeah. And it's like, no, actually, I'm free now.
Yeah, yes.
And they don't get it.
Yeah, it's so weird. I know. I feel like there's been many conversations where people are like, but like, why would you do that to yourself? And I'm like, that's the question you need to ask. You need to ask why I would do that to myself. I know why I'm doing it. I'm here for a reason, and I dress this way for a reason. And I think people, like you were saying, they always have this misconception that you're doing it for your husband. But I was Muslim before I got married, so it's like, hold on a second, at the time when I converted, I was living alone. I could do whatever I want. I really had zero restriction. People do need to think about that logically, though. What would make a person change or give up that freedom, as they say, which is a really misrepresentation of what it is, may I add.
Exactly.
But it's like, only the truth would make me do this. You know, so you need to ask yourself, what is the truth? Why am I here? Who am I doing everything for? And, you know, what does it mean to give up these things? What does it mean to not chase, you know, this sort of beauty standard? What does it mean not to partake in certain activities, not to cover yourself, to not go out alone, to limit yourself? What does it do for a person? You know, like, actually what you don't realise is it fulfills, protects, stabilises, it gives you everything. It's crazy, and people don't recognise that because they have been so conditioned that certain lifestyles are normal. You know, that this life is the only life that exists, therefore you should live it to its fullest. You know, in other words, have no morals, have no standards, you know, indulge, which we know that this life is not that's for the next life. The next life is where we indulge. The next life is where we relax. The next life is where we don't work. In this world, we work. In this world, we abide by the guidance. It gives us everything. You don't know until you know, you know? It's fun.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And it's fascinating how, like, you'll see these, like, protests where women are burning their hijabs, right? And the thing that I find so bizarre is that we're here in the, like, us American Muslim or Western Muslims, we're like fighting just to wear it. It's so fascinating. We're switching. It's strange. Like, the world is switching a little bit, and you're like, I'm going to wear this whether you like it or not. It angers you. My beauty is not just your little billboard anymore. And it's so surprising for feminists to be so angry at the hijab and then say that they are all for women choosing, you know, how they present to men.
I wouldn't want my daughter to cover up, okay? But I completely respect this woman's right to do this. But, I mean, you're a very bright woman. You're a molecular geneticist, right? Thinking for yourself, woman. No man's told you to do this. You have decided you want to do that. Surely the feminist ideal, which I keep being told about, is women should be allowed and free to dress and behave how they choose. But you don't want this woman, Sahar, to choose her right to wear this. I
completely respect Sahar's decision to do it, but I just don't think there is a feminist argument. You're an academic and geneticist. I mean, do you think it's appropriate, let's say, in this country, that a woman wore the full-face veil to teach primary school or to be in a police station? Do you think that you need some face-to-face contact to make civic society function properly?
So first of all, thank you for expressing that, because that's the truth. A lot of people never had the chance to speak to me. And they think they've been socially conditioned by the negative stereotypes around Muslims in the media. And they think someone like me is oppressed and can't integrate and can't participate in the society. I absolutely have no problem to take it off whenever is needed, whether it's airport, if bank identity check, because I know that it's for everyone, and we have.
Would you take it off now for us?
No, because there's no need.
No, but would you have any problem with doing that?
I will have a problem with that. Why? Because there's no security reason that is required. Number one.
So if it was fundamentally required for security reasons, you would not have a problem showing your face.
Absolutely.
Who are we actually to say to a woman like this, she cannot wear a veil if she really personally decides she wants to?
It's a tough one, Piers. It really is. I mean, I'm not a Quranic expert, but
freedom of choice means freedom of choice. If you have freedom and you choose to wear a veil, that is freedom. I certainly don't have a problem with Zahar wearing the veil. Right.
I find it curious. I find it strange
to ban it, though.
I think that.
So are you now changing your mind?
No, I think in the public realm, I think it would actually help if women did not cover their entire faces apart from their eyes.
Have you changed? But if a woman is exercising her freedom,
it is causing on the streets for a start.
Well, the people abusing her, they're the problem, not Sahar.
No,
she's not the problem for wearing a veil.
Completely the woman and the woman's right to do what she wants. I do have a problem with the full face veil.
The contradictions in their own philosophy become really upfront.
Recent changes in French law, girls not being able to attend school if they wear hijab or abaya, the niqab ban that has just spread all around Europe.
In Egypt and in India, right? I remember they said
there's some things going on there as well. You do not hear the feminists coming out in support of women then. Why? Are we not the right type of women? Not that we need it. I really, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear governments put in place these sort of restrictions, I don't think about the lack of feminists supporting me, because we get used to knowing how things work. We know that the only one that we can count on is Allah. Like, we're not seeking validation. We're not seeking for people to accept us. We are who we are. We live life. We get on with it. At some point, we're going to die. Seems a bit morbid, but really, you have to have this mentality right now, especially right now. You really need to. It will keep you in touch. It will give you a really healthy attachment to the dunya, which a person needs. They can't over-expect from anyone or anything. This life is short. You have time periods with everything. So, and hopefully we do enough in the world to be able to, achieve the better in the next, Inshā'Allāh.
Exactly. And the hijab in and of itself, just like to really reiterate for sisters who may be on the fence, the more you wear it, just you'll love the feeling of the drapery blowing in the wind, the way the fabric rests on your shoulders, just the pure gracefulness of the religious garb, and then being totally free from that envy of women who peacock. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but like when I was really into the gym, women will go in front of other women and strut. And like there's envy, there's a jealousy, a competition, and this allows women to become very vain and vapid. When you dress in an Islamic manner, you're not threatening as many women's egos, so you get less evil eye. And I really enjoy that, because I've had some women who, they're very stunning. They stand in front of me and it seems like they do a little dance, and I make them feel weird, I think. And I perceive
spend a lot of time in nature, I can tell.
Bird watching, I do watch bugs. Like, I'm that analytical thing, and I'm a people watcher as well.
Yeah.
And so these women will come and like, you can tell the energy is disturbed. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you can feel the difference between someone who's revealing at all and revealing none. And the people seeing that contrast right next to each other in the queue for coffee, it does something. It does something. Even though I'm standing there with my baby and we're minding our own business, it's still something that it shifts the whole environment. And this makes the woman feel like I have to show I'm more beautiful. Whereas me, I'm usually staring up at the sky, or I'm playing with my little baby's hand, and I'm not paying attention to her at all. I don't look at her. I can see her, what she's doing, but I don't acknowledge her to give her the satisfaction to let her think I'm jealous or oppressed.
Yeah. So tell me, Milhan, is that freedom? Is that mentality freedom where you feel the need to? Because I've seen, honestly, this reaction in some women is so common. I was on vacation with my husband, right? And we were staying at a hotel, and we went for breakfast one morning, and I was wearing, what I wear. We were sitting eating breakfast at the communal breakfast place, and we were just sort of sitting in a wee corner because I hate crowdness. I hate it, right?
Yeah.
And these two women, they came and sat beside us, and the way the dining area was is there was mirrors all over the walls.
Oh.
And I kept seeing the girls try to catch my husband's attention, but alhamdulillah, he's God-fearing, and he also knows his wife. And we don't play like that, Milhan, right? The Scots, we don't talk, we don't argue. Arguing is cute to us. We get straight to the point, right?
Exactly.
So as soon as I started noticing that these lassies were trying to catch his eye, I got so angry. At one point, these girls started taking their baubles out their hair. I remember thinking to myself, what are you doing? My anger was seen. Let's just say that.
They want to do it because, like, your modesty does something in them where they feel like, okay, there's like an inadequacy going on in them, so they have to have the domination aspect come in, where, well, make her man look at me, she's covering up, and obviously he's not as good as, you know, she thinks, so I'm going to tempt. Best things a husband can do is when he sees a lewd woman trying to catch his eye, is to kiss the hand of his wife, to hug her, give her attention. This infuriates those women. Then they feel insecure inside and shamed. Yeah. Right? They get happy when they see the woman like doing something like they punked her, we call it. But when the man rejects her, doesn't look at her, hugs on his wife, kisses his children, this makes them feel like, oh, you know, it's wonderful. And Allah bless all the men who kiss their wives' hands and don't fall for those traps.
I mean,
you know, see, in us Muslim women, we don't have to worry about doing that kind of crap to other ladies.
We want happiness for all women. That's the thing. Like, you don't know how many disputes I get into who really do not like the concept of polygyny. And it's like, right, okay, well, no woman likes the thought of polygyny if it comes to their own marriage. This is common sense, you know, this is nature. It is what it is. However, there is something bigger than that, though, that we need to keep in mind. You know, for you to be involved in a polygynous situation, even if you don't think like that initially, imagine if you get yourself to a place where you're thinking of your co-wife's rights, you're thinking of your co-wife's times, you're sort of holding your husband accountable. Is that not the level of Iman that we're all trying to reach? Like that sort of selflessness? Is that not the goal? You know, so it's like, if you focus on the negative in life, that's all you'll see. But if you see the potential, if you see the opportunity that you can gain within that, you should go for it. Like, we're going to die.